Yes.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Live at Lunch. It is great to have you at a special Live at Lunch today where we're going to be having a look at what's going on. If I seem a bit distracted, I just want to quickly start a video up on a conference that's busy happening online as we speak. So
today we are literally wearing two hats. We're doing the Live at Lunch for Sunny Hill folk, but we're also leading a conference for the movement we're a part of. So we've been busy the last couple of days, and Richard has just been an absolute boss with all the tech. So he's wearing two hats today. That's why we're together in this space, which is fairly unusual, isn't it, at the moment, in the month of November? But is what it is.
Yeah, but we love having you with us, and we're going to be spending the next 45 minutes or so. We got a special guest that we'll be bringing in a moment. But if you're here, if you're in the comment sections, please jump in. We want to say hi. We want to say hi to you. Hey, we got Tanya, we got Louise Bird, we've got Tina Morrison, we got Katie Ford, Alan Cook. It's so good. Me distracted, never. Yeah, I'm never distracted. I'm always focused, 100% focused. But it's so good to have us. Please let us know what you're having for lunch. We would love to be able to see who's having the best lunch. Dom, what are you having for lunch?
Let me tell you what I'm having for lunch. I've got homemade bread, right? Let me show you this. This is for real, because normally I have mug shots, like I'm the mugshot boy, like 50p, noodles in a bag kind of scenario for lunch.
It's true.
But today, my wonderful wife, Louise, made homemade bread.
Ooh. That's love. That is love.
And alongside that, right, Moroccan soup. Moroccan soup, which I've never had before, but I'm telling you, it's pretty spicy, but I quite like it. Let us know your favourite type of soup.
Favorite type of soup? I'm going to say, because not a lot of people go with this.
Go on.
Broccoli and Stilton. Absolutely love a good broccoli and Stilton soup. Come on, broccoli and Stilton soup.
That is grim.
Yes, Tanya Plinster says lukewarm coffee for lunch. Come on.
What?
Come on. 100%.
Can I tell you something better than lunch?
What?
We've got some great news, haven't we?
We have got some great news.
This is amazing news.
Can we share this news?
I don't know.
I don't know if we can share it.
Let's ask the boss. Louise!
Well, we're just shouting Louise. Victoria Sponge. Hattie Hillman's having a salad with grilled hot dog and borderline in-date chicken. I don't know what borderline in-date chicken is. It sounds like it could be...
Oh, we can't share the news.
Can we not?
The news was...
We can't share nothing with you.
The news was...
free cheeseburger at McDonald's this week.
Phil...
Yeah?
...has got some new trainers.
Phil does have new trainers.
That's big news.
And on that note, speaking about Phil having new trainers, we're going to be right back with our very, very special guest today. So we'll see you now. Phil Coleman's in the house.
Yo.
How are you, Phil?
I'm good. How are we doing, guys?
Good to see you, Phil.
So Phil's been on this conference that we've been helping host online, and me and Phil the whole morning has been me changing his name on Zoom to other things that he keeps changing back. So that's been a lot of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, loads of fun.
Yeah. Tanya says, have you also got new haircut, Phil? Or is it just that you haven't brushed it? What's going on?
New haircut probably a week or so ago. You guys haven't noticed this. Look, check these out.
Oh, wow. You got new glasses.
New rims, mate.
You know what? You just look old all the time. I'm just saying there's much love in here for broccoli and Stilton soup. Phil, what are you having for lunch? What is your favorite soup?
I'm not having anything for lunch. I'm about 35 days into a 40-day fast at the minute, so...
I mean, I don't know why we're laughing at that as if there's no way.
Who would do that?
There is no way. But no, I haven't had time.
Phil, what's the longest you fasted for?
3 days, I think.
3?
Yeah.
Lightweight.
Yeah. How long as you fasted for?
Well, it was going to be a week. It ended up being 4.5 days.
Very nice.
How about you, Richard?
The longest I fasted for, this is genuine, in Bible college, we did an 8-day fast.
Wow.
And I would never do that again. I would never get instruction from Jesus to tell me to do that longer fast again. It was brutal.
I feel like God's given me a word for you, Richard.
What would that word be, Dom, as you're eating your Moroccan soup and homemade bread?
He's saying, I just get in this picture sense of a year-long fast.
A year-long fast. Do you know what the saddest part of this whole thing is if you go on a year-long fast and you don't wither away, how big were you?
Yeah.
When it began, you know what I mean? At the end, when you're going, I've only drunk water, but I'm still going strong.
Yeah.
So good. It's great to have you. Some love happening in here. For Phil, Barbara Bird is cussing us out, saying that we're all boasting.
Yeah.
We're all roasting. No, nothing. Okay, fair enough. Great. So if you're in the chat room, we love having you with us. Welcome to the Live at Lunch show, where we dive a little bit deeper into the sermon from Sunday. If you haven't seen the sermon, you can see it. Just head over to sunnyhill.church and you'll be able to see it there. You can also listen to it on our podcast. I think it even went out on Instagram this week. Amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I don't know what that means. I don't know if you can scroll back in Instagram land to see it, or if it's just, if you didn't miss it, if you didn't see it in the moment, you've missed it.
Yeah, that's what it means.
So basically, if you didn't see it on Instagram and you're only on Instagram, that's it. No sermon for you. But go to the podcast, go to sunnyhill.church, and you'll be able to hear them there. If you are in the chat, we would still love to know what everybody is having for lunch. We've got some great things kind of coming in. I just love Alan Cook really making a strong case for saying, I hate all soup. I hate all soup. Oh, and he's having jacket potato with cheese and beans.
Oh, good shout.
That's it.
That's a great bit of lunch.
That is a good lunch, dude.
Yeah.
I think the problem with soup is like it's still baby food, isn't it? It's a bit like mashed potato. Of all the potato options out there, mash is my least favorite because
Really?
I feel like I'm not 10 months old. I'm a grown man. Give me solid potato. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, but mash is like the lazy man's potato. You don't have to chew a lot. Literally just and swallow. It's amazing. No one feeling that not happening. Matt Crab is having cheese on toast. What kind of cheese are you having, Matt? What kind of cheese are you having? Is it cheddar? A bit of cheddar on nice.
Oh, that's very mature. That's so mature.
You know what the problem is now is I can't mute you or kick you off this meeting, which is really, really sad.
You can't.
Anyway, we're going to be getting into today's sermon, but before we do, what we're going to quickly do is just play a recap. So if you missed it, here is a little highlight reel of kind of what Dom was speaking about on Sunday.
Fear is a huge issue in the world. Fear releases adrenaline into your system because you perceive yourself to be at risk, because ultimately you don't know how to respond to what you're facing. In 2 Timothy 1:7, God says this, and this is addressed to believers: "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and a sound mind." You're thinking, but I'm a Christian and I fear. What I want to propose to you is that it's probably the case that there's part of your life that is yet to be yielded to the reality of God and who He is. And the truth is God hasn't given you that fear. What if the answer isn't to fear less, but it's to fear right? Surely a good pastor and a good preacher should be saying, you don't need to fear. Well, you do. It's important, right, to state that fear isn't all bad. Those who fear the Lord, Proverbs 14:26-27, those who fear the Lord are secure. So if you can align your fear towards God, you're secure. He will be a refuge, not just for you, but for your children. Fear of the Lord is a life-giving fountain, and it offers escape from the snares of death. He is that good. He is that just. He is that faithful and that consistent that He's the only one who should be feared.
What a word. What a word. If you missed it, I'd encourage you, go to sunnyhill.church. Be sure to check it out. And obviously, we've got two heavyweights in the room. Also, we've got Phil here, so that's great. And I wanted to jump
Can I just say, I'm in Phil's corner. Phil, I love you. I think you're amazing. Ignore this man. He's just jealous of the skill and the grace on your life, Phil. That's all.
You say this now because the camera's live, but when we were muted, you were cussing that boy down. You were literally slating him. I can't believe it. No, I'm just joking.
I'm not necessarily in disagreement. This depends what you mean by heavyweights. You know what I mean?
Okay, thanks very much, Phil. Why didn't you throw that at us? Throw our weight at us. Go ahead.
That's harsh, man. Phil, are you fattest?
Yeah.
Or no, I think Richard's fattest.
This has taken a really, really
Come
painful
on.
turn.
It's been a long few days.
It's been a hugely long few days. Just to say, Matt Crab is having cheddar cheese on white bread. That is an absolute win, Matt. Absolutely loving that. But we're going to be jumping into this idea around fear, and actually how, as we've been pursuing in this Holy Joe series, we need to respond well to fear. And off the bat, Dom, what I wanted to ask you was this, is you say in the sermon that we should fear the Lord, that this is a good thing for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
The question I have is, in reality, in someone's life, what does that actually mean? It's an easy thing to say, like fear the Lord. How does that manifest itself? To walk around going, I'm too scared to pray? What are we really talking about here?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think ultimately, kind of the idea that I was saying on Sunday, one of the sound bites was, whatever you fear, you will revere. And I think the fear of the Lord isn't it. The fear of the Lord, what it doesn't do, when you know Jesus, it doesn't push you away from him. It draws you to him. I think the best dads, the best like human parents that we see as models and examples around us are those whose kids respect them, speak highly of them. There's a reverence around that. I think it speaks of a quality of relationship and a sense of honor. And I think sometimes our attitude towards God, particularly in the West, and like sometimes I'm guilty of this, is we become really familiar and we just like, we take his goodness, we take his kindness for granted. And we become familiar in how we serve him. We become familiar in how we give. We become familiar in our sense of worship. And for me, I just think there has to be that reclamation of this awe and wonder of God. And it's not about cowering in a corner. It's actually growing in confidence and becoming who he's called us to be. But in the context of saying like, God, I know you are mighty. God, I know you are my King. I know you are my Lord. And therefore submitting ourselves to his will, submitting ourselves to his intentions and his agenda. So for me, the fear of the Lord is really reclaiming that sense of awe and wonder and reverence. And I think if we can do that as the church, I think that's a game changer, that is, because I think when we do that, what we're doing is we're stopping worshipping other fears that aren't worthy of our reverence or worship. So for me, that's what the fear of the Lord is really about at its heart.
Can I push that a little bit?
Go on.
Because what kind of, I totally get it, but we live in an age and a time where what you're talking about, that reverence or that awe, is actually more of a giddy excitement. Mm-hmm. You see a celebrity and they're in the room and you're starstruck and you are kind of, you don't know what to say and you don't know what to speak.
Yeah.
Can you unpack a little bit about what that awe is, that reverence you're really talking about when it comes to this? Does my question make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question, and I'll try my best. I mean, Phil might have a bigger vocabulary for this, but I think like if we look at Justin Bieber or look at Tom Cruise or some kind of celebrity in the temporary, is there may be a sense of giddiness around this idea, oh, Justin Bieber's in the room, right? Now, the only reason there's that giddiness is because I've seen him on Instagram, I've seen him on TV, so therefore there's this acclaim that kind of surrounds Justin Bieber. What we've got to do with God is we've got to pitch ourselves correctly in the story of who he is, which is like, in the scheme of it, God who is eternal, from everlasting to everlasting, the beginning and the end, like has existed since the dawn of time, before time itself. He's outside of time. Then there's us, this little blip on the radar. For me, it's this idea that like God isn't a celebrity. He's actually the one who made me. He created me. He knows me intimately. I was trying to have this conversation with my boys the other day because Caleb just couldn't get around this idea that like I was saying, listen, God has more thoughts about you, Caleb, than all the bits of sand in the whole world, like the sand on the seashore. God has more thoughts about you than there are bits of sand. And he couldn't even compute this because I was saying, like, even if you just filled a shoebox with sand, there'd be like 1 billion bits of sand in there. Yet God has more thoughts. That's what the Bible says. God isn't a liar. Like, he doesn't exaggerate. So like when we read that stuff, it's genuinely true. And I think for me, it's just that awareness that this God who is over all things. So Jesus says it best. He says, don't fear man who can hurt you, but fear God who has the ability to put your soul in hell. In other words, like, let's get an appropriate understanding of the vastness of God, his supremacy, and kind of live in that reality. I think so. It's not just a giddy kind of like, oh, God's my mate kind of scenario, or like God's kind of cool, I read about in the Bible. It's this awareness that, like, I think is it David in Psalm 8 that says, what is man that he's mindful of me? Like the son of man that he cares for him, yet he's set him a little lower than the heavenly beings. And I think it's just this idea that, like, this awareness, like, who am I, God, that you even give one about me? I think that's what I'm talking about when I say reverence. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. We're going to flip it over to Phil, because Phil, I'd love for you to unpack in your life a little bit of what fear of the Lord looks like. But if you are in the chat rooms and you are joining us at the Live at Lunch, so we love having you with us, please do post some questions into the chat that we can fire at Dom. Obviously, if you've got questions with Phil, any questions whatsoever can be fired at Phil on any topic. Nothing is off bounds. Whatever you want to ask, we can fire at Phil. So go for it. But Phil, what does this idea of fear of the Lord look like in your life?
Yeah, you can fire any question at me, but whether you'll get an answer or not is another matter. I think just back to the previous question, which connects to the question you're asking. When you talk about that sense of giddiness around like stardom or celebrity, I think sometimes that can help us understand what it means to fear God. I don't think it's always just about a giddiness. I do think there is something about being in the presence of greatness that makes you feel small, or makes you feel very conscious of your own inability, and I think when we come in,
sorry, can I just interrupt you quickly?
Yeah.
When I walk into a room, do you feel that way?
Of course.
Right. Carry on. I was just wondering. I don't want that to just go on.
We've all experienced that, I think, to some extent.
Yeah.
Someone that you respect hugely, maybe from a distance, steps into a room with you, and there is a sense of a heightened self-consciousness, I think, which comes from being in the presence of greatness.
Yeah, it's great.
Someone who, I don't know, some super sports person, or some, even in the Christian world, a super leader or a super preacher who you respect. There is a heightened sense of awareness of who you are and how small you are compared to them. It may be a wrong or distorted view, because essentially humans are humans. But I do think that sense of awareness that we feel, that sense of intimidation or nervousness, it's in some way an echo of what we should feel or what we sometimes do feel in the presence of God. It's about greatness, isn't it? When you're in the presence of greatness, you kind of are more aware of who you are. And I think the fear of the Lord is a bit like that. It's not being afraid of God, but it's understanding your perspective in light of his greatness. Oftentimes in the Bible, I think it's the book of Ecclesiastes, it says, tread carefully when you go into the presence of God, tread carefully, not because God is someone to be afraid of, but because greatness, infinite greatness should be approached with a serious attitude. It's a bit like I've used the analogy before of bonfire night, right? On bonfire night, it's cold, it's crisp, and you're all outside, you're all huddled up, you got your gloves and your scarf on, and there's a bonfire in the middle of the garden, and there is something about the bonfire that draws you to it, something about the warmth, something about the appearance, something about the beauty, and you might even say majesty of fire raging that draws you to it. But there is a point where you approach a fire and you go this far and no further, because there's something compelling about it. There is also something deeply terrifying about it as well. And I do think that in some ways is a helpful way to think about the greatness of God, the grandeur of God, the power of God. There is something so compelling about who he is. But yet at the same time, his power and majesty and greatness is so infinite that there is a moment where you have to go.
It's great, Phil.
I can't go rushing into this.
Yeah.
that opens up lots of other conversations, because you know, Hebrews talks about with Jesus coming that we can enter boldly into the throne room. And so there is a big conversation to be had about how Jesus in his humility and meekness helps us approach greatness. But I do think there is a sense in which we need to be careful. You know, we need to understand the infinite greatness of God, and be aware of that as we approach him. But I do understand that will throw up a lot of other questions as well.
That's great, Phil.
You know, I think it's really good. One of my favorite parts of The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe is when the children are about to go and meet Aslan. And in the book, Aslan is a type of Jesus, and they're going to go and experience it. And if you haven't read them, I'd really recommend The Chronicles of Narnia to you by C.S. Lewis. And they're talking to the beaver. All of the animals can talk because they're in a wardrobe, so let's not get lost in the analogy. And they're talking to the beaver, and the beaver's like, we're going to go meet Aslan. And the kids say, I think it's a little girl, I can't quite remember. She says to the beaver, she goes,
Lucy.
Lucy, yeah. She goes, is he safe? And the beaver looks and goes, he's not safe.
Yes.
But he's good.
Right.
And I think that it's an important point when we're talking about the fear of God, is we're not coming to this like malicious, vengeful, wrathful God. But we're also not coming to a safe God.
Yeah, right.
What we're coming to is a good God
Yeah.
who will look at doing risk, who does abhor sin, who doesn't enjoy at times when we step out of what he's asked us to do, who doesn't just go, that's just fine and no problem at all. But he is a good God.
He is good.
He is a good God.
Yeah.
We're going to be right back after this with one of my favorite little segments that nobody else likes. But because I've got the computer, we're doing it anyway. Welcome back to Weird Food Facts. And so, what are you laughing at? It's Weird Food Facts. This is the best segment ever invented. Not really. I mean, it's getting pretty old now. We need to think of something else. But right now, this is what we've got. So here's my Weird Food Fact for today. You may find this interesting or not. But if you're a man, I think that you will find this food fact absolutely true. Listen to this. Chocolate was once used as a currency. So as early as 20 AD, ancient civilizations of Mexico and South America, they used to use the cocoa bean as a system of money. Now, I say that because if you're married or you have a girlfriend and you've ever done something wrong, the easiest way to pay for that wrongdoing is through the currency of chocolate.
There we go. Boom.
Anyone else found this? Is this only me?
It's good, man.
I mean, it's a profound thought you bring there, Richard. I'm going to have to think upon that.
Okay.
I think you should have your own live at lunch show where we ask questions about your food facts.
Just my food facts.
Where on earth do you find this information?
The web, the internet, obviously, the most reliable source of food facts that there are. I go deep diving onto the web, like basically whatever's number 2 on the Google search is what I click, and that's my food fact.
So out of interest then, what's Charmaine's go-to chocolate if you're trying to get in the good books?
Charmaine's go-to chocolate if I'm trying to get in a good book. That's a great question, actually. She has a few varieties, but anything that's got either a praise, like a hazelnutty, praline kind of thing inside of it, she really, really loves. If it's been kind of really, really bad, then I'll go all in, maybe do like a luxury Toblerone, something like that. I mean, that is me going all in, and that's probably pretty sad, let's be honest.
There we go. There we go.
So anyway, that was today's Weird Food Fact. So we're back because no one was helping me out in that. You all just basically left me out there on my own, which is still good. Hattie Hillman saying we should still use chocolate as currency. Thank you, Hattie, for the support.
Imagine that, though. Imagine that. You go to buy a car and you're like,
No, don't talk about it now. The Weird Food Fact time is gone. Don't bring it up now. What is going on here? So, hey, Adam's just joined into the mix. We love it when Adam joins in because he always brings the most complicated questions that we get to throw at our guests. And so here's a great one. It's an easy one, Dom, that I'm going to throw on you. So I know that you're going to enjoy this one. Adam says, hello, panel. Hello, Adam. Well, you have to say hello. You're part of the panel.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Adam.
We're going to try that again. Adam says, hello, panel.
Hey, Adam.
How do we encourage a secular society to revere a transcendental God when YouTubers and Instagrammers with their tangible hit of likes and shares are legitimized as career paths?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like it's a great question, Adam. And I think for me, the idea in this isn't that we get everyone else to fear God. It's that we cultivate the right sense of fear and reverence for God ourselves. So we're not trying to get our neighbors to revere God. Really, we're about leading our own hearts to revere God. And I think that as the church really does that, I think what we're seeing now is that the world is just coming up short time and time again. We're seeing this all over the place. We're seeing it in politics, global politics, local politics. We're seeing it in finances, economy. I think people are just getting really disenfranchised with the system, with like the world order. I spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. I think people are getting disenfranchised with deception and just the lies that are often peddled by the press and all that kind of stuff. And I think ultimately people are hungering after truth. But I think if the truth that we profess doesn't lead us to a sense of reverence and awe, and there's a sense of familiarity, and there's that saying, isn't there, that familiarity breeds contempt. I think it's that idea that if it doesn't capture our hearts and our imaginations and our mind, and ultimately our worship, which is another word which is included in that fear of God word in Hebrew, which is yireh, which is to worship the Lord. I just think it's not, I think when we fear God in the right way, it's actually attractive to the world. But the goal for us, I think, isn't to get everyone else to fear God. It's for us to fear God and for that to become an attractive force for a transformation in society, I think. And I think we've seen that before. We know ultimately that the society's better when there's a reverence for God. It's healthier, it's more prosperous, it's safer. And we see that when revivals happen, like prison count goes down and, that sense of public attitude goes up. I think it's just ultimately really on us individually just to decide in our heart, as for me and my house, I'm going to serve the Lord. I'm going to revere the Lord. I'm going to worship the Lord. So I think for me, it's not trying to address a global problem. It's trying to deal with the individual challenge of ourselves going, I need to revere the Lord in my life. So it's a great question, though.
Yeah.
I think, can I just jump in there?
Yeah, you can. I mean, as an Instagram influencer, Phil, you can talk right into this.
I think Adam's question kind of hits right at the heart of the human problem and the human condition. I was just reading yesterday, Romans chapter 1, where the Apostle Paul kind of gives an explanation for why the world is as broken as it is. And he says the reason we do that is every human being knows that there is a God who is to be feared, who is worthy of worship. Just by looking at the skies, the Apostle Paul says, he says, just by looking into the sky and seeing the expanse and the glory and the beauty of the universe, every human intuitively knows that there is a God worthy of worship and deserving of our fear. But the problem, Paul goes on to say in Romans chapter 1, is that human beings, because of sin, we choose to ignore that reality, and instead we refocus our worship and our fear on created things rather than the creator. And so Adam's absolutely right, is that what we do is we worship things that are created rather than the one who created them. So we choose to worship Instagram influencers and celebrities and sex and money and drugs and rock and roll and all that. We direct our worship to those things. And as a result, Paul says, and you can read this in Romans 1, Paul says, so what God did is he chose to give us over to the desires of our heart. And that is why we find ourselves in a world that, yes, on the one hand, because of God's grace, is glorious and beautiful and loads of things worth celebrating. But on the other hand, nobody can deny that we live in a messed up and a broken world. And it's because we choose to ignore the reality that is clear. Paul, this is astonishing to me. It challenged me. Paul says it's plain to everyone that there is a God, a transcendental reality who is worthy of worship and deserving of our fear. But because of sin, it corrupts our minds and our hearts, and we choose to direct that worship to created things. So how can we encourage people to redirect it? I think it needs more than just our gentle encouragement.
But can I add to that? I think like sometimes we fall into the trap, Phil. I don't know if you agree with this, when you, Richard, as well, obviously, of thinking that if we want to see transformation in society, it happens from the top down. So we need to infiltrate Westminster. We need to infiltrate sectors of society.
It's a great point.
Bring Christian influence at the helm, and then that kind of fizzles down. And I love it when Christians get involved in those higher echelons of society, whether it be to do in finance, commerce, education, anything. I love it. So I'm not against that at all. I think God does gift some Christians to occupy those stations. But actually, transformation that I see in church history for the last 2,000 years has never been this kind of, ultimately, what you could argue is actually after Constantine, and it does go top heavy, is that actually we see a decline in church impact. Because ultimately now it becomes structural, it becomes housed, it becomes confined to an institution rather than the grassroots life-giving style that I think the church intended to be. I was reading just the other day about some early martyrs, like around 200 AD, right? And they refused to make this confession that Caesar was Lord and all this kind of stuff, right? Stuff we've heard before. They just refused to make this confession. And they were writing to the church saying, please don't pray that I won't be martyred. Like, just don't pray. Like, it's a privilege. Like, I'm ready to do this. And actually, this is what caused the swing in society back then, where these people, they had a greater fear than the lion they were about to encounter, or this gladiator they're about to encounter. They had a greater reverence for something so much more powerful that when they submitted themselves to that authority, it actually had a huge impact and fallout in society, where actually the sales rates of even gladiatorial sports went down in Rome because Christians were too willing to die for their faith. And I think, for me, there's just something really profound. If you're a fearful person, you can never live that reality because ultimately you're fearing everything else other than God. And I think for Christians, it's to get to this place where I'm not trying to infiltrate the top. I'm just trying to be genuine down here, and that will bring me before kings. That will bring me before places of influence. And I just think for me, that's a really exciting thing, because it means for every person watching, whether they're a single mom, whether they're a person in their 70s, whether they're a 30-year-old person trying to have a good crack at their career, like, you can resolve today in your heart that you're going to shift things in society just by being faithful and reverent to the one who made you. And I think that's a really cool idea.
That's so good. And if you've just joined us at the Live at Lunch show, welcome. It's great to have you. We're going to change tack a little bit, so we'll be back right after this. So my mother-in-law, who watches from South Africa, shout out.
Hey, your mother-in-law.
My mother-in-law.
What's her name?
Iris.
But
she's not in today because there's a 2-hour time difference, and so she had to go into work at 3 o'clock. But she did send through a WhatsApp message with a question, and she's desperate for it to be asked.
Oh, come on.
So because I don't want to have to buy my wife any chocolate, I'm going to be asking that question. The joy of hosting something that you can. And this is what her question was. And this kind of ties into, I suppose, the theme of this whole series around the idea of truth. Holy Joe loves the truth about. And she has this question. She says, on Sunday, Dom, yourself said, God hates sin.
Yeah.
And she asks, is some sin, like murder, absolute sin, and are others more relevant to the times that we live in? How do we actually determine what is actual sin?
That's a great question. Phil, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. I think oftentimes when we talk about sin, our default is to think in categories. So we go to behaviors. So is murder sin? Is, sexual immorality sin? Is stealing sin? Is lying sin? And there is a sense in which you can answer those questions and explore those questions, and it's right and helpful to do so. But I think when you take the whole Bible into account, sin is way deeper than that. Sin begins way before behavior. Sin begins in the heart, and Paul says in Romans chapter 14, he says, whatever does not proceed from faith is sin.
It's great.
In other words, anything we do which isn't motivated and fueled by our trust in God, our worship to God, our reverence for God, the Bible says, well, that's sin.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that and understand that, because if we don't, then we begin to categorize sins into categories of really bad, not so bad, oh, that one's okay. Whereas actually, according to the Bible, sin is sin.
Yeah.
Sin never begins with behavior. It always begins with posture of heart and attitude. And so Paul says anything that doesn't come from faith, in other words, anything that doesn't come from a heart that has postured itself correctly before God, it's sin. And so you could do something good, but with a sinful attitude, right? And this is
so good.
This is offensive.
It's a great thought.
I could do something good, but I could only be doing it good because I want people to give me acclaim and to give me praise.
Yeah, it's really good.
Give loads of money to, this is what Paul says. He says you can surrender your body to the flames, but if you're not doing it out of love, then it means nothing.
Yeah.
I could give all my money away, but I could only be doing it to raise my profile. And increase my sense of praise. So that would be sin as much as telling a lie would be, or stealing would be.
I was going to say, Phil, it's kind of like what Jesus says, isn't it? Like where obviously we see the black and white commandments in the scripture in the Old Testament, where God gives Moses a law, prescribes a law for people to live by, not just because God hates the things that he's telling them to not do, but because it's also the best way to live. It's just, it's gonna prosper them, it's gonna protect them, it's gonna, you know, living according to these things. So like murder, for example, which is what Iris kind of addressed in the Old Testament, it's thou shalt not murder. It's really clear, it's really stark. But then in the New Testament, Jesus adds another level to that commandment by getting to the heart of the problem, which is the feeling of hate. You know, so murder is an outworking of the presence of hate. And I think that's the thing. So actually, when we talk about sin, it's not just about these black and white acts that we go, oh, we can do this, we can't do that. Like you say, Phil, it's just affirming that sense of what's going on the inside. And anything that is outside of faith, like you say, it's sin. I think it's a really good thought, Phil.
Can I just push that a little bit? How does this not become debilitating for Christians in their lives? Trying to go, I have so much fear now that everything I do, every motivation I make isn't a motivation that's driven out of faith or out of this correct place. And now I'm living in sin. And should I wear a black t-shirt today or not? Oh, what are you saying to me, Lord? Come and speak, come and speak. How does it not be that crushes us?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure Phil's got a wisdom bomb to drop on this, but for me, I just say, like, this is why Jesus makes the difference. It's like when I give my life to Christ, it's not because I just want to go to heaven. It's because I'm acknowledging that I can't do this life without him. And by me giving my heart to him, surrendering my heart to him, essentially what I'm saying is I'm actually incapable of actually doing anything that meets the standard of God. Like Paul says, doesn't he, in Romans, he says, all have fallen short of the standard of God, all the glory of God. And it's me just basically giving up the fight, saying I actually can't. Like in my own strength, I'm sinful. In my own strength, I'm broken, I'm dysfunctional. And even though when I go into my life with Christ, I carry that still physically in a sense, spiritually, and I know I've been made perfect with Christ. So the liberating idea now is I fear God, not because I'm destined for hell, so therefore I'm terrified, but I fear God in that I'm reverent and I'm amazed at what he's done for me, that I'm not running from him now, I'm now running to him. And I think like that for me is the big game changer. When you give your life to Christ, the fear of God fundamentally moves from this petrified of being sent to hell or petrified of a future without God to a place of being driven into his arms because he's been so kind, so good, so gracious. And I just think it's that loving, secure relationship that's the game changer.
And I think that kind of helps to answer Matt Crabb's question, which was, in church, we often love to use the word saved, but less often do we talk about what we're saved from. Can we have a healthy fear of God's justice and power while still being secure in his love? And I think that what you said really speaks into that. I'll probably knock this one onto Phil, just from Steve Robinson. It's a really easy one, Phil, but coming off the back of what you said, so Steve's asking, so you can tell a godly lie, yeah?
That's a good question.
Sorry, you're breaking, guys. Oh, the signal. Oh, we wanted to answer it as well.
Oh,
white noise.
Oh.
It's a good question, and probably a big discussion to be had around ethics and morality and how the gospel impacts on all that. But I would say, based on the idea that sin is driven by heart and attitude, doesn't begin with behavior, I would say there is a sense in which sometimes the godly thing to do would be to lie. So the classic example, which is always given, is Corrie ten Boom, isn't it? In Nazi Germany, she was, hiding Jews in her house, and some of the Nazis knocked on the door and said, "Are there any Jewish people here?" And she said no. She lied, not because she wanted to get ahead, not because she was trying to gain something for herself, but because out of love she was trying to protect others. So was that a sin for her to lie? I would personally say no. It's the same sort. You see the same sort of deal in the Bible as well, like Rahab. When the Israelites come into Jericho, and Rahab hides the spies in her house, and she tells the people that come to her door, no, they're not here. And she was commended for her faith, And David, when he lied and he pretended to be insane before the king, you see examples where people are lying, but they're doing it not from a selfish or self-preservation motivation. They do it from a motivation of protecting others, loving others, and giving glory to God. But that is a massive discussion.
That's a great point, though, Phil. That's awesome. Awesome answer.
There's a guy called Norman Geisler. He's a Christian ethicist and theologian. He writes actually quite extensively on this. And he says the biggest issue we have in this area is we adopt the world's language of which is the less of the two evils. And he says what we need to ask really when it comes to these issues is which is the greater good. And God would be affirming the greater good. And one of the examples he cites is in the Old Testament when the Hebrew women hide away their babies when they were going to be slaughtered in the time of Moses, and they come and get knocked on by the Egyptians, and the Egyptians say, "Where do you have any Hebrew boys here?" And they go, "No, we got none of them." And it says God commended them for doing a good thing.
Yeah, right.
And so great question.
Can I just say, I'm so thankful that you two are in this room, because I wouldn't have known where to go with that question. So praise God for Phil and Richard this afternoon.
Really, really good. So I'm going to throw up one last question. This comes from Fru, who has asked this, and then we're going to try and pull something together here. I don't really know how. We'll see what happens, or I'll just click a button and we'll be gone. Hi there, Fru here. Hi there, Fru. Good that you're here.
No, we've got to do it all together.
Oh, there we go.
1, 2, 3. Hi,
Fru. Hi, I'm Fru, and I got you. No, okay. I don't know where I was going with that. There is the issue of anxiety, which is a form of mental illness. If someone is debilitated by fear to slip up as a Christian, that is not God's plan or indeed normal. Medical help can be sought. What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah. Don?
Personally, I'm not against medical intervention at all. It's like when people say, "I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm just going to trust God." I mean, I admire the faith, but I have nothing against medicine and medical intervention. However, for me, I guess what my concern is that in society we've got labels for so many things, so many conditions, that I think sometimes we inherit a label and we justify something that actually God wants us to come against in the spirit. Now, what I mean by that is that occasion in the scriptures where the dad brings his child to the disciples and says, "Look, my son keeps throwing himself on the fire," right? Now, I don't know what condition that would be classed as now, but I think, there would be kids in society, in my kids' school, that would probably do some version of self-harm or harm themselves in some way. They've got some problematic children. And I think what we do in the absence of God, so in a godless society, we create a label and a category that justifies the behavior of somebody who actually needs to be free from something. And for me, I think that, if somebody's got a medical condition that causes them to be anxious, okay, well, that's a starting point. But do I think Jesus can heal that? Absolutely, I do. I believe Jesus can raise the dead, so I can believe that Jesus can heal somebody who is anxious. But if someone's depressed, can Jesus heal that? Absolutely, he can. There are also antidepressants, which can also serve that. Now, for me personally, I would always prefer God's healing because it's for me, it's full and it's thorough. Whereas medicine, all it does is it tempers the problem. So for me, I don't know whether I answered the question that well or not, but I think what we've got to be careful of in the church is just accepting labels that are given us that create a space where we can live without actually confronting the problem in a spiritual way.
Yeah.
Because I think first and foremost, before we're physical, we're spiritual beings. It's our spirit that lives forever. It's not our physical being. So actually we're more spiritual than physical. And therefore Paul says our battle isn't against flesh and blood. It's against principalities and powers. So I think in so many of these things, there's freedom available.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not against medical intervention.
Yeah, I think that oftentimes what we do is that we don't see medical stuff as a temporal fix. And even if it's lifelong, it's still a temporal fix. And that should never replace the need to drive with faith into going after healing and after God coming in and breaking in and changing things that are kind of busy going on there. Phil, final thoughts around this thing of fearing God. In your life tomorrow, how important do you think fearing God is going to be?
Super important.
I mean, you want to unpack that a bit, or just that's what you're going to just go super important, I'm done?
Super important. I mean, it's Proverbs 9, isn't it? And it appears Psalm 111 and other places as well. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Me understanding moment by moment that I am not the one in control of my life or in control of this world, that I am not the one who is over all, that I am not the one who sees all or knows all. That is the pathway to true wisdom. And I think the verse that Dom shared on Sunday is just so profound, worthy of memorization, worthy of deep reflection. And it doesn't seem to make sense on the surface, but when you dig down, it is so profound. The fear of the Lord is a life-giving fountain. It's a life-giving fountain. If I want to walk in freedom and joy and blessing and prosperity, it begins with me submitting humbly to the fact that I'm not God and He is. It begins with me submitting humbly to the fact that He is my creator, and I am the created. And so fear of the Lord, reverence for God, worship of God, understanding who He is, for me, when we forget that, we're on a pathway to despair, to be honest. When we forget the fear of the Lord, we're on a path. And again, I wish we had more time to speak about this. It's not being afraid of God.
That's right.
No. It's not being afraid of God. And so the fear that Fru mentioned in the previous question, that's not fear. Fear that God's going to punish me whenever I make a mistake. That's not the fear of the Lord. That's unbelief. That's mistrust. Fear of the Lord is just understanding that He is God and I'm not. But being afraid of God is unbelief. God doesn't want us to be afraid of Him. He wants us to trust Him and submit to Him.
Just that John Bevere quote that I said on Sunday, because it speaks into that. So fear of God is not being afraid of God. It's being afraid of being away from God.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not being afraid of God. It's being afraid of being away from Him.
Yeah, for sure. It's in Him we live and move and have our being. That's the reality. Like every breath we breathe is from Him. So let's walk in the knowledge of that, in the acknowledgement of that, for sure.
Great.
That's so good. Thank you so much, Phil. I feel like you should have done the sermon, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like Phil, you should do part 2 on Sunday. I think that would be good.
Yeah.
Hey, smashing it out the park, Gandalf. It's amazing. We love what you're doing. We love your work, man. We love your work. We love having you.
I loved the sermon on Sunday. It was a corker.
I mean, but you're a fearful person, so
I've loved the whole Holy J series. Actually, I think Dom's been on top level through this series.
What about the Live at Lunch series? Have you? What about that?
Yeah, you're smashing it, dude.
Thanks, dude.
You know what, Phil? I've had loads of great comments about the Holy Joe series. I think
none about Live at Lunch.
Yeah, loads about Live at Lunch.
What you're trying to get
Richard,
to?
it's great. You're doing a really good job, mate. Just keep going, pal. Keep going. and like loads of people just been sharing comments saying that like it's really impacted them and it's been really significant for them.
So good.
And I'm wondering if it's because it's not so much because of the preachers and necessarily even the preachers. Why would you think that this series is connecting with people or resonating with people so well, Phil?
I think it's something we don't think about or talk about enough in the church.
Okay.
And I think it's a deep chasm in many of our souls as well, this idea of fear and reverence and worship and awe. And like Proverbs 4, it's a fountain of life. People have been drinking from that fountain over the last 3 weeks. And when you drink something that's so refreshing and joy-giving, you just want more. And I think that's what you've been doing for us, Dom, in the last few weeks, is you've been helping us to drink from that fountain. And it's beautiful. And
let's also note that since doing Holy Joe series, something's been happening on a Wednesday that might be what's made it great. I'm not saying that that's a definite. But we've loved being with you over this lunchtime. Thank you for joining us at the Live at Lunch show. This is such a big topic. We could spend hours in discussion. And actually, I think you could probably spend a couple of hours just firing questions at Dom and Phil and getting them to just kind of answer and unpick some of the thinking, because this idea of fear of God is such a massive conversation. If you're in a small group, I think they're picking up some of the stuff in the small groups.
Yeah.
So do take some of your questions there. And if you're getting stuck with your questions there, just kind of post them somewhere. I don't know. Email them to office@Sunny Hill Church. We'll forward all of them on to Phil, fill up his inbox, and he'll be sure to write each of you a personal message and send you a little gift.
Well, I also think in the broadcast on Sunday, even in the chat rooms on YouTube or Facebook or wherever, or Instagram, if you write questions or thoughts you've had from the previous week, at least we can see them there, and then we can either bring them to this space or, like Richard says, we can bring them to another environment where we can try to unpick it a little bit.
Hattie's showing a lot of love for you guys. Love your leadership and teaching. And I'm not even being sarcastic, just so that there is really good. Sunny Hill is going small groups. Whoop, whoop.
I agree. Whoop, whoop.
So do get into a small group if you haven't been able to. Other than that, make sure you tune in this Sunday, 11 o'clock for Sunday Live. We've got Adam Bird bringing a word. Whoop, whoop.
Yes.
And we have got Gandalf the Grey himself leading worship.
Yeah.
Just remember that. Reminder. So absolutely, please do that.
Can I just give you a highlight for what's coming on Sunday?
Yeah.
Adam is going to be talking about making decisions.
Oh, amazing.
And it's cool because that's one of the points on this last Sunday, that one of the marks of having the spirit of fear is that you're indecisive. And Adam's going to go after that a little bit. So I think that's going to be really
good. Cool. Other than that, thank you so much for joining us. You can carry on posting stuff into the chat rooms, I think. I'm not too sure how all of that stuff works. But we look forward to seeing you on Sunday at Sunday Live. And if not, then we're back here next week for Live at Lunch. We're going to have Adam Bird in the house and some special guests. And we'll get into speaking about what Holy Joe loves the truth about decision making. So that's going to be great. Other than that, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great having you.
Yeah. Holy Joe loves the truth about decision making.
That's not the title. What's the title?
I don't think he's got a title yet, but I don't think it's going to be that. Holy Joe loves the truth about decision making.
That's a catchy title. It rolls off the tongue. It rolls off the tongue. When that's the title, let it be known here and now. I came up with it. I'm owning that title, and these boys have cast me down.
I can also say the following Sunday, Louise, and I'm committed to her now because it means that she can't back out, is going to be preaching, and she's got a great word that I think is going to really help people as well.
Holy Joe loves the truth about whatever the word that Louise brings. There's a title for you right there, and I think we should promote that. We love having you. It's been great doing it. Go to Sunny Hill Church to find out everything that's going on. Other than that, we will see you all on Sunday or next Wednesday. Bye.
See ya.